So I was having this conversation this morning with a client. He has a home in Boston and one here in Houston, and he bought a house in Houston that didn't have a control system. And so as he was coming back into Houston today, he gave me a call this morning, and he's like, "I am just so tired of dealing with like the 100 apps I have for my house." And he's like, "I know you told me about a control system about Savant, and you told me that I needed to try to aggregate this technology together and make it work better." And he's like, "I'm just ready. I'm ready for it. I'm tired of having to go to my alarm app. I'm tired of having to go to my lighting app. I'm tired of having to go to my pool app and my outdoor landscape lighting and all the different things. Everything has an app. It's a nightmare. I'm done with it. Get me into an app." Have any of you ever dealt with anything like that or had those conversations or looked into that?
Yeah, I mean, we live in, as we know on this podcast, an apartment, and part of we have no kids, we have no pets, so we live a life where we like to do lock and leave, and we really like to, lock the door and walk away and go on vacation or go on a trip or a road trip or something. Invariably, we haven't done something. Oh, the housekeeper's coming, we need to open the shades for her. Or, there's a heat wave. We better turn the temperature up. There's something we want to do. The security system, there's something happened in the building. Did something happen in our apartment? And invariably, we go to a single interface and we can manage all of that. And we can create scenes for, to manage it. But there's always like 5 questions. And if we have to go to 5 apps, we end up not doing anything.
Hmm.
I mean, even the simplest thing that, living in Austin, it gets very hot. So when we're away for 2 weeks, we don't leave the air conditioning on. We move the temperature up to 78. But then when our housekeeper comes in, who comes in, once a month or so to help, we don't want her to sit in a 78 degree. So we either program it or managing remotely, we fix that. And it's the convenience of a simple interface, I think, that makes the real easiness there.
Yeah, I have a different problem than you, Nigel. When I'm trying to get out of the house for vacation, I've got two young kids that we're trying to organize, like get out the door. So we do always forget something. And we have a similar experience, which is we have a smart home control system, but even that means I still have to remember to get my phone out and hit that we're away. I love what we design for our clients, especially when they have advanced lighting control systems, where on their way out the door, they can just hit a physical button by their back door as they're leaving to get in their car that just says vacation, and it's done. They don't even have to have their phone. They could literally just leave their phone at the house and go on vacation and know that the house is taken care of. Like, that's powerful.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, as a with young children as well, it's always it's a hassle. I can't believe how much stuff we have to actually take. When it was my wife and I, we would just bring our luggage onto the plane, and now I've got to check bags and a stroller and a car seat, and it's a nightmare. And I think I'm going to wait a while before I travel again because it was such a traumatizing event. I was actually out of town last week. I have a Savant system; everything kind of controls together, and I've got a great sprinkler guy. And as you all know, it is so hot in Houston right now. We need lots of water to keep our plants and stuff alive. And he's a great sprinkler guy. He is not a great communicator. And so he calls me up last minute. He's like, "Hey, I'm in your neighborhood. I need to go by, adjust your watering schedule to make sure all this stuff is working and your plants don't die." Well, of course, fortunately for me, I was able to go into my app. I was able to open my gate, open my garage door, let him in, let him do what he needed to do. He called me 45 minutes later, said everything's looking good. I got your water schedule adjusted, and I was able to close all that stuff back up. And I never had to give him access to any of those codes. And so it was such a convenience of being able to have all that in one place and the ability to control that remotely without any issues. It really makes a big difference having all that stuff available to you wherever you are.
And if he'd wandered around the house, you probably could have used cameras to see exactly where he was. So, you would have known if he was going or she was going somewhere you didn't want them to. I want you to go back to the point Keith made. So of when I show people lighting control in our place, they sort of get that switches, as long they get switches rather than buttons. But I say, look, here's the 2 buttons you're going to use most. They're by the front door, just like Keith said, and one of them is marked lights, and one of them is marked away. And then, well, what's the difference between lights and away? Well, I'll show you. This button turns off all the lights. This place resets the place for away. All the shades come down, the air conditioning. I mean, that's the level. And if I've done something wrong, if the watering person wants to come in, I can manage that remotely when it happens from the lock through the whole thing. And that really is making your home work for you rather than you having to work your home.
Yeah, and I think to take that a step further, you have home and away, but we could easily do home, away, and vacation. And away makes it a little bit warmer in the house, and vacation becomes way more efficient. And I think that's one of the benefits of working with someone like Bravis is we do this all the time. So we kind of have an understanding that you probably don't want to let your house get up to 90 degrees if you're planning on coming home that evening. Maybe if you're going to be gone for a month, you're not as concerned about that and you just want to, be more efficient. But because we've dealt with all these problems before, you don't have to guess as to what's going to make the most sense. If we do a good job communicating with you about what your desires are and how you're going to use the home, we'll have hundreds of ideas, across dozens of locations where people have come up with kind of the best practices for making your home as user friendly as possible, especially when you're away.
That's right. And not only is it good just for environmental things, right? It's also good for things like being able to turn off a TV that was left on in a hurry as you went out, or being able to shut off music that you had playing in other places. And so it works for the lighting, and it works for the shades, and it works for arming your security and closing your garage door and doing those kind of things. But it also makes it great that you don't have to run around the house and go, did my kids leave a TV on in the game room upstairs? Or did I leave music on in the bathroom when I was getting ready? All that stuff can come off. And by having it all integrated together, it really makes that a seamless process.
And conversely, it can turn it all on as well, which means
Yeah.
you've got a security system, so the house looks like it's lived in, and you can automate that. But the other thing is, we also have quite a lot of customers, and we every day we talk to people who have multiple homes. Now, we're not all lucky enough to have multiple homes, but lots of people do. And they have, a small place up in the hills or near the ski place. They have their may have a summer cottage somewhere. They may have a main home. Um, One of the things I hear a lot is how do we make them all work the same way? I don't want to have to learn to use one home differently from the other. I want a common experience across all of them. Can these systems do that well, do you think?
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point, Nigel. The reality is that there is so much information that's thrown at us nowadays, things that we have to learn, things that we have to know how to use. And the ability to learn one thing and be able to utilize that in multiple spaces really allows you to then, in this instance, as our clients are traveling to the next house they're going to, lets them get into it and get into a living mode right away without having to go through and making sure that TVs are working or lights are working, or what do I hit over here, or do I remember what that light switch did, or however that works. And so it really makes that an experience that's duplicated. A lot of times I break that down into simple terms, right? Like, you don't want to have one experience watching TV in your family room and then you go to your bedroom and it's a completely different experience. You want to have the same experience there. You want to have the same functionality that works off of it. In this instance, when our clients are traveling and going to different homes, they want that whole same experience. They want that the way they interact with their house and the way they get to entertain and the way they get to live in that space to be the same experience. And that's absolutely doable, and part of what we do. And part of the beauty of Bravis, the fact that we have so many locations and we have this ability to service our clients wherever they are, is really unique to us. And to be able to make sure that they've got that same exact experience everywhere they go.
Yeah. And I think another thing that's neat about what we can do is because we work with so many control systems and we do so very, very well, if your existing home has one control system, we don't necessarily have to rip it out to match it to the
Mhm.
other home. We can work with what you have and replicate that. Or let's say you're not happy with it and you want something different. Well, we can move you to something different with a bunch of different options. And we know we have one that will fit for you. I want a way for us to have our buttons by the back door have the home that you're going to. So you could have a Montana mode and you just hit that and it shuts that house down and fires up the Montana house. So we need to work on that.
I also think there's a couple of other safety things that we haven't talked about. Floods, if you've got a winter home and you're worried about flooding, or a summer home and stuff, we can integrate all of those things in as well. So you're not only monitoring the lights and the shades, you could be monitoring other life safety or home safety systems. Although I think the funnest thing I've seen integrated is the person that wanted to integrate their Tesla wall into the system so they knew whether their car was charging while they were away.
Well, priorities, right? You got to make sure you get there and you have a full charge. Um, to your point, I have several clients who have mountain homes, and one of the things that almost is universally adopted by all of them is they have a water sensor or a water gauge or a valve that
Mhm.
even shuts off. And so a lot of times when they're hitting their away button and they're leaving, their home to come back to Houston, it shuts off the water. It makes sure that that stuff is not on. And at the same time, when they're going back, it's really easy just to activate it right back on and not have to wait for that to cycle the water through when they're there just to get kind of caught back up on stuff. And so we see that commonly, and that's something that happens pretty frequently out of it. Although I've never run into the test the wall monitoring thing. I'll have to pay a little more attention to that as
Man,
we
I,
as we keep
I
doing
love
this.
that water valve thing. We actually are lucky enough to have a small vacation home, and there was a huge freeze there, and I could not get there, and I had to have somebody, the guy that had built the house, stop by the house for me and shut the water off. And having that added to the home beforehand which would be so cheap, and that peace of mind would be so valuable. Any other things you're seeing clients do for that just kind of peace of mind of the home they're leaving, like their vacation homes?
I, I think it's a lot of what we've already touched on, right? It's making sure they've got security on it. It's making sure that they've got water bugs and water sensors because that's a really easy way to manage that and get notified very quickly if there is a problem.
Mhm.
It's also making sure that they've got the right, smoke alarm sensors like that that go through it, carbon monoxide sensors that are tied into things so that we get notifications come out of those.
Cameras
And then
with
making
smart, yeah, with analytics. Yeah.
with analytics, that's right. Yeah, I see a lot of cameras, a lot of tracking those kind of things. Seeing cameras now with analytics is that's a whole podcast, right? We can dive in so deep off of that to go through it. But absolutely down that path, there's a lot that can be done there too, so that they can know what's going on.
I would also remind us that these things have to be easy to use. So you can do everything we're saying as you started off, Kevin, from having 150 apps on your phone. But but increasingly, that's the world of a very sophisticated, technically savvy person. And we have lots of clients who have lots of family members who aren't as technically savvy, who don't want to search through their phone for the right app, and who don't. And so part of this is making that experience easy, because if it's not easy, they won't do it.
That's right. Yeah, this particular client I started with this morning, he's actually a Harvard grad. So it's not a mental capacity thing or a
Mhm.
learning thing. This guy clearly has the brain power to manage the 15 apps. It's just not worth it to him. It's so difficult to go through. Each thing does it its own way. And when you can bring it through a single app home and be able to control all that stuff, you can do it much faster. There's a timeliness side of it where you can get it done quicker and be able to get all the information you need quickly. And then there's just the uniformity of it where you know how to do it and you know how to get through that in a simple way. And you'll look at things far more frequently. If you were looking at cameras while you're in controlling your audio, your video, or whatever it is that's going on, or turning your lights on, you'll see what's going on across your property far more frequently than if you're having to go search for it. Oftentimes, people don't look at that stuff until there's a need to go look at it. And so, by having it all together, it really opens up the usability and the use of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Well, in most of these control systems, when you open that app for the first time, if you have three homes, they'll be listed right there together if you have them all in the same control system. So you can just as easily choose one as opposed to the other, which is very simple. And Kevin, I would just add what you're saying is totally true. Most of our clients are absolutely capable of learning. Heck, most of them could engineer half the systems we sell. Like they are that intelligent, but they're paying money to get time back and to not have these things weighing on their mind and not have these other frustrations. Like they have gotten to the point where that's a trade-off they can make, right? A little bit of money now for some more of my time and for some more of my mental capacity back. And I think that's a very fair trade-off for most of our clients.